Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Heartbeat, your daily Inter Miami podcast. And today I'm joined by a very special guest, Mr. Saur from the Drive Pink Dialogue, my co host, my favorite guest on this podcast. How are you feeling tonight?
Yeah, by this time you should already refer to me as the ad hoc host of the Heartbeat as well, because I'm racking up those numbers. It's always a pleasure to be on this podcast. I can't wait to talk into Miami with you as always. And you know what? This is very quickly becoming my favorite daily into Miami show. So happy to be here.
Yes, well, I appreciate the kind words. And today we are going to be talking about the best Inter Miami 11 for the Leagues Cup. That means, and we're going to build it from the back forward. We already saw City dos Santos get a start to open up the Leagues Cup. We're going to talk about who is the best center back partnership. We'll talk about what's the ideal midfield, and then the front three, and et cetera. We'll go through the whole 11. The parameters for this exercise are that it's for the Leagues Cup. So whether that's for Saturday night, for the first round of the knockout stages, for later, we understand there's going to be a need for rotation. We understand there's going to be a need for, players coming in and out. Guys will get a knock. Guys will get a yellow card accumulation suspension. But this is sort of the ideal 11. If Inter Miami has to go into a must-win game, this is who we want. And the other parameter is it's for the Leagues Cup. So no Benjamin Kramaski, no Diego Gomez, no Lionel Messi. With that said, you excited for this conversation? I mean, I feel like the center backs is going to be interesting. The midfield is going to be interesting. Do you think that this is going to be easy, or do you think this is a little bit more of a challenge?
I think this is a very timely conversation, especially after the lineup that we saw last weekend. And there's a conversation to be had about who is the best lineup, but who's also potentially going to be starting. I know there was a lot of concern about whether Tata Martino is taking this particular tournament seriously and what the decision making was in putting Dos Santos in goal and a couple of other decisions that he made. So very timely conversation. I think I have a clear idea in my mind about who the best starting 11 is, but as always happens throughout these conversations, I tend to change my mind fairly quickly by the end of them. So we'll see what 11 we come up with. But you missed a very important third parameter, which is hopefully Tata Martino is listening to the heartbeat and makes the right decision going forward once we're in the knockout stages of this tournament.
I believe that is a prerogative of any coach of Inter Miami at this point.
Yeah.
It's sort of written into the contract. They have to listen. Let's start in the front, because I think the interesting conversations are as we move towards the back of the 11. And let's just start with striker. Luis Suarez has come back. He scored his first goal. We just saw Leo Campana come and give us 5 or 6 straight starts. He is healthy. He's athletic. He gives you something in the front that Luis Suarez doesn't. But Luis Suarez is Luis Suarez. How are you feeling about these two? Is this a pairing that you're comfortable rotating, or is this it's Luis Suarez, and then when Luis Suarez needs a rest, you go to Campana?
Yeah, I think the latter is exactly what I would look at. Luis Suarez is the primary striker for Inter Miami. This is a knockout tournament. We need him to perform, to be at his best. I've already made a prediction in our previous shows where we've discussed the Leagues Cup, where I think that Luis Suarez could be challenging for the Golden Boot for this particular tournament. And I think he is going to be the starting striker. If we were playing the league alongside the Leagues Cup, so if the MLS was on at the same time, then there might have been a conversation about playing Campana in certain games. But at this point in time, where there's just one tournament to focus on, I don't see how Luis Suarez gets dethroned by Campana. That being said, I would 100% use Campana as a very important off-the-bench option throughout the tournament. Bring him on in the 60th minute, bring him on when we need a goal. He offers something very different, and I think the partnership that Suarez and Campana have in terms of their different dynamics to the teams and different offerings to the team are very important for Inter Miami to try and get a result from this particular tournament.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. But let's stop here for a minute, because I think this is a great position to put down the ground rules of what we think rotation should look like, right? And I agree. In your best 11, Luis Suarez is the guy. But we've already seen Tata Martino take Suarez off early, trying to get Campana some minutes, but more, I think importantly, trying to get Suarez some minutes off the field. We know Suarez can go, but he's never 100%. He never looks 100%. This is, in best case scenario, us playing 7 games in like 21 days, 22 days, something ridiculously short like that. What does it mean for Inter Miami to have a player of Luis Suarez's physical capacity playing every single game? Should we be rotating for this upcoming game on Saturday night against Tigres if that game is only about seeding and not about qualifying to the next round?
Yeah, 100%. If it's just about seeding, I would give Campana the run ahead because, yes, the gap in quality between Suarez and Campana is vast, but I'll be honest, seeding isn't necessarily the most important for this upcoming game. And if we already know that we're through to the next round after the Tigres Puebla result, then I would actually heavily rotate this team. And I would like to see Leo Campana on because in the forthcoming games where we expect Inter Miami to progress to potentially the final, Luis Suarez is going to have to play a lot of minutes and the rest of the team as well. And if you can rest players at a certain point, this weekend would be that marker, depending on how the midweek result goes between Tigres and Puebla.
Okay, and what about later on in the tournament? Because if we advance out of the group stage, we'll know that possibly by the end of the night tonight, but certainly by the end of our game against Tigres on Saturday night. And then from there, it's going to be 5 straight games to a title. Obviously, Inter Miami could lose any one of those and not end up playing all 5. But do you just go with Suarez until he can't go? Is that the strategy?
It depends on opposition, but without knowing that variable, I would still put Suarez as going for every single game as much as he can, as long as he can.
Explain to me what you mean by that, and feel free to use a hypothetical example to illustrate your point.
Yeah, so if we go up against a team which is not necessarily the same quality as Inter Miami, and we do come in as heavy favorites, like against a Puebla, for instance. And again, this is a tournament where things can go wrong. You can be playing the worst of the teams and have the complete opposite result that you expect. So that is obviously a consideration. But I think if the quality of team that we're playing is relatively low, I would put Campana on as a starter. But that would also be I would see that as a 1 out of 10 case where if Luis Suarez has some issues, he's picked up a knock, he's not 100% to go, then put Campana on. Secondly, you might want to have a little bit of a different tactic against certain teams. For instance, against Columbus, if you want to press from the front, or if you want to sit back a little bit, have the defense start from your striking position, you might consider putting Campana in. That being said, the more I talk it out loud, the more I think I don't see a way Luis Suarez doesn't start a game, I'll be honest. If Leo Campana was in a different form altogether, that would have been a completely different conversation. But I feel right now he's struggling and he's trying a little bit too hard. We saw that when he came off the bench. It just seemed he was trying too much to do a lot of different things and just wasn't coming off. He got a little bit frustrated, and I feel like he needs a little bit of time away. Coming off the bench might be the best option for him at this point in time.
Yeah, I think you actually illustrated the only time I could see it being Campana, and that is against a team like the Columbus Crew, where you want that pressing from the front because of a specific tactical style you feel is going to give you the best chance to win. And then you always have Suarez in the last 30 minutes to try and break down a tired defense and maybe get you the clutch goal. That's
Exactly.
really the only time I could see it. I don't think if it's, there's a chance we play Toronto FC in the first round of the knockouts, and I think that's a team we're significantly better than from a quality perspective. I still think you start Luis Suarez. Let's go to the right wing because it feels like a simple answer. Julian Gressel has been excellent there over the past almost 2 months now. He's locked down that right wing spot, and no one is seemingly taking it from him. Easy one to just put down in pen and kind of move on.
Yeah, and honestly, the only other option that we would have on the right wing would potentially be Matas Rojas, right?
Probably throw Leo Afonso out there.
But. Yeah, I would still consider Julian Gressel to be the best out of those three. He has shown that he can play multiple games over a stretch of period of time, in a small period of time, and he's locked it in, man. That right wing spot is Julian Gressel's at this point in time. Yes, once Messi comes back, that's a different conversation to have. But at this point, he's doing fantastic in that role, and it just seems like he's finally figured out what his responsibility is in this team, and he seems to be thriving in it. So yes, Julian Gressel is locked in there.
Yeah, and the other thing about Gressel's game is it doesn't feel so physically demanding that he wouldn't be available for the next game. So I think that one's a relatively easy one. Let's hop over to the left side where I think we get our first real question mark, and that's between Robert Taylor and Matthias Rojas. We haven't done the midfield yet, and so maybe that will inform our conversation about this. But Robert Taylor's been the guy for quite some time. We've seen a lot of Matthias Rojas in the midfield. Are you keeping Robert Taylor there as your, no doubt about it, number one? Or is there a little bit of rotating? It doesn't matter. Either guy you're comfortable with. Where are you at for the left wing spot?
This one, it pains me a little bit to say this, but I feel like Robert Taylor hasn't done enough necessarily to warrant out and out. Okay, he's the man on the left wing. When he plays, he offers something very different from every single player on the pitch. But I could see certain situations where you might want Matthias Rojas in there when you want to play a more ball-playing midfield. And yes, we're going to talk about the midfield combination, but I feel like there is a conversation to be had about Matthias Rojas, potentially in some cases, in some games, when it requires a tactical shift to start that game. That being said, I think if we don't consider the opposition and if we just are picking our best 11, I would still think Robert Taylor would be the starting left winger, with the caveat that you could potentially put in Matthias Rojas in there depending on what tactics you want to play.
Yeah, I still think Robert Taylor, though, for this exercise, is your left winger. It's sort of hard to talk about the midfield without talking about the center backs, but we'll do our best because we have to choose one before we choose the second. So let's go into the midfield. We've been starting Federico Redondo, Yannick Bright, and Matthias Rojas in that midfield. Other options that are available to us: Sergio Busquets, David Ruiz, maybe Julian Gressel, although I think we're sticking with him in the right wing for now. Where are you at with the midfield in terms of ideal midfield? And maybe this is going to be a hint towards where we're going with the center backs or where you're going with the center backs. But I want to hear from you. What do you expect to see Saturday? What do you think is the prime, have to win, must win game midfield for what's available right now?
Yeah, on Saturday, I would expect it to depend on the outcome of the midweek game, as we already said. So that's a little bit up in the air. We could even play David Ruiz in the midfield on Saturday. We could see a few surprises in there. Maybe Lawson Sunderland shows up again. So that's a little bit up in the air. Can't really predict that. But for me, and I know this is going to be very controversial, and I'm going to say the three that I think are the best combinations in there: Yannick Bright, Sergio Busquets, and Matthias Rojas, for me, is the combination to go with.
Okay. I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. I think that the Sergio Busquets question is what's most interesting about this whole conversation. And really, it's the only reason we're doing a whole 25 minutes on this, because whether he belongs in the back line or the midfield is so dependent on how this team wants to play, but more importantly, how you feel about your other midfielders and how you feel about your other center backs. I think he gives you a stability, a confidence, a ability to dictate tempo and the rhythm of the game that is so helpful, and he can do it from either spot. So it's a matter of, do you feel good about your other two midfielders to control the midfield alongside Busquets, or do you want three true midfielders in the game and then put Busquets in that back line to do what he does back there? Is your answer to this, and where you want to put Sergio Busquets, is that dictated by what Busquets is and what you want from Busquets? Or is it dictated by how you feel about the other players that could possibly be in the midfield versus in the back line?
Yeah, because this exercise is based on our assumption of what the best starting 11 is. I don't think the best starting 11 for this Inter Miami is when Sergio Busquets is in the defense. I don't think so. Yes, it's potentially the right option in certain cases where we need to control the game from the deep. But this Inter Miami team, I believe, will be unlocked to its truest potential once Sergio Busquets moves back into the midfield and once we have a out and out defender in there. Sergio Busquets is has been fantastic in this role. We've had a few doubters. I've potentially been a little concerned about at the start about Sergio Busquets' ability to play centre back. He has been phenomenal, barring one result that we don't talk about, Cincinnati won 6-1. Other than that, he's been absolutely brilliant in that role. But I don't think it's a permanent solution. For this Inter Miami team to elevate to the next level, Sergio Busquets has to be in the midfield, particularly when Messi comes back. That being said, I feel like what I saw from Darwin Martinez on Saturday was exactly what I wanted from my centre back because his ball playing ability seems to be good enough to still be able to control the ball in the back line and then shore it up by pushing Busquets up forward into the midfield. Obviously, not to the level
Let me
of
stop you.
Busquets.
Let me stop you. Let me stop you. We'll talk about the center backs in a minute. I want to stick to the midfield because by putting Bright, Busquets, and then Matías Rojas in front of them, you're omitting Federico Redondo. Talk to me about the decision there. And before you do, let me just say, I think we both agree Yannick Bright, to me, is the first person you put in the midfield. And then Busquets is the second person if you want to put him in the midfield. He goes second. So it's really about that third spot. And you are electing to go with Matías Rojas over Federico Redondo. Talk to me about why you feel that way. Is it structural? Is it talent-wise? Is it, what makes you make that call?
Yeah, I think it's just balance. And honestly, you could make a case for Redondo being in there, and I could be convinced otherwise. My decision has been made primarily on balance and profiles. For me, Yannick Bright is undroppable at this point in time. Absolutely no way he doesn't get into the starting 11 with what he's been offering to this team. You need a number 6 to hold down the fort in the midfield. You need a number 6 that protects the back line, a number 6 that allows you to play on the transition. He's slowly starting to prove that he can be a little bit of a distributor who keeps the ball moving, not necessarily as prolifically as Sergio Busquets, but keeps the ball moving. And at this point in time, no doubts, he has to be the first choice in the midfield. Sergio Busquets, I don't even need to say why he needs to be in the midfield. He's just the best player potentially on the pitch when Leo Messi is not there. The third option for me is obviously Matías Rojas I've picked is solely because I feel we need someone who makes those late runs, who can play in that number 10 position between the lines and allows for a little bit of fluidity with our front three as well, because then you can have Gressel moving centrally, Matías Rojas going on the right side. He just offers a little bit more dynamism than someone like Federico Redondo. I feel Federico Redondo is a little bit too similar to Sergio Busquets, and that sometimes clashes with the balance of the midfield. And we've seen he doesn't necessarily sustain his performance levels over 90 minutes. And I just think Matías Rojas has been offering a little bit more to this team than Federico Redondo. I completely understand if you disagree with me on this, because this might be a controversial opinion, but that's how I see it.
Yeah, I think I do disagree, especially with even your reasoning, because I think Federico Redondo actually offers you more in the opposition half. He presses higher and is more effective in that sense. And then we've also seen him make those late runs into the box to be a threat as a goal scorer. Yes, Rojas does that too, but I think in terms of who's the most effective over the first 60 minutes, and especially when it comes to a sort of pressing system that Tata Martino likes to have, I actually think I prefer Federico Redondo at the top of that midfield over Matías Rojas. And then we've also seen Matías Rojas be very good off the bench. All that to say, I think my midfield is just as it's been: Yannick Bright, Federico Redondo, Matías Rojas, and that'll be sort of an intro into our center back conversation. because I really like Busquets back there. And I have seen a lot of people say, man, I can't wait for Busquets to get back in the midfield because then our midfield will be amazing. But from what I've seen from Busquets and how he allows us to play so expansively out of the back, it's really exciting. You have to partner him with someone that can really handle him, make up for his deficiencies. And that's really just athleticism. It seems like David Martinez is that guy. It's still early. We haven't seen a lot of David Martinez, so we'll see. Aviles can certainly be that guy. But for right now, I really liked what I saw from Busquets, and I really liked what I saw from David Martinez. As a pair, they're both excellent passing out of the back. I think they allow you to play incredibly expansively. I would love to see that back partnership with a different right back to see what that looks like. But I just think that this Sergio Busquets as center back is worth more than people are giving it credit for. But I want to hear your opinion.
Yeah, first I want to ask you a question. If Inter Miami plays Cincinnati in this tournament again, do you put Sergio Busquets back in that centre back role?
It's an excellent question. It's an excellent question. I don't know. I have to really think about it because I don't know if Busquets being in the midfield is the solution either. Like I don't know if that necessarily prevents what we saw from FC Cincinnati when they broke us down so frequently. So I don't know. I'd have to think about that. It's an excellent point. It's an excellent point.
And I'll be honest, my question wasn't based on the fact that Inter Miami lost 6-1 to Cincinnati because Sergio Busquets was in that centre-back role. He was playing next to Christoph, who was equally as bad, equally as culpable for a lot of our goals. Our back line was too high up to even do anything about preventing those counter transitions. So that's just a very general question to get an idea of what your mindset is, whether you would play Busquets against the best team potentially that we face in this tournament. That being said, for me, I understand all your points about how good Busquets has been in that centre-back role, and there is definitely a point to be made about keeping him there permanently, or at least till the end of this season, until we get maybe someone who's an out-and-out centre-back and is undroppable in that position. But I truly believe that once Lionel Messi comes back, the best way this Inter Miami team plays is by pushing Busquets back into the midfield. Because I just feel when Messi comes back, the dynamics and the combinations and the balance changes, and we have to adapt to that. And that being said, I do think there's a case to be made about David Martinez and Aviles at least having certain game time together, because they are essentially the true centre-back partnership that we've looked to create. Maybe someone new comes in during the transfer window, I'm not too sure. But having two centre-back options who are pure centre-backs in there and then pushing Busquets in the midfield feels to me the right move, particularly because I think moving forward in the long run, that's how we're going to be playing. It's an experiment that I really enjoy. It's an experiment that I would continue to use from time to time against certain oppositions. But when we're talking about the best 11 against the best teams in this League's Cup, I'm not sure if that's the way to go.
Yeah, and again, that Messi conversation is separate because we're just talking about the League's Cup. We're not expecting to see Messi during this tournament. And so I want that to frame this conversation. But just because we're getting a little short on time, I want to power through left back real quick because I think we're both, it's Jordi Alba and, you give Franco Negri or Noah Allen the last 10 minutes off the bench if the game's out of reach kind of treatment. But Alba also isn't the kind of guy that isn't going to be available every single game. That's sort of his MO. So we'll just power back past left back and let's head over to right back.
What if I want to put Franco Negri in the left back position, man?
Well, this is my show, and I'm going to veto that. No, but I know you're joking. But if you want to make that argument, go ahead.
No.
Okay.
Absolutely no qualms about having Jordi Alba in the left back position because I know our listeners are going to absolutely hammer me. So moving on.
Okay, so let's go to right back. Cello Wigan is clearly still the top choice for Tata Martino. What say you?
top choice, good choice, wrong choice. I think.
And hold on, before I say this, again, for the Leagues Cup, beyond this Saturday night game, we're going to be do or die games every single game, right? You lose, you go home. You not only lose, but if you don't win in regular time, you're going to have to win on penalties. You don't even get stoppage time. In that environment, do you trust Ian Frey not just going forward, not just to be an offensive engine, but to be solid defensively in the type of way you would want in a, any goal can ruin your whole tournament type of situation? Do you trust Cello Wiegand defensively a little bit more? I'm just setting the framework for this conversation before we just say, oh, it's easy Ian Frey and move on.
Ian Frey offers something in defense that nobody else in this team does. He is, as we've said, an X factor player when it comes to the right back spot.
In offense?
There's a case to be made that Cello Wiegand might be a better defender, but the gulf in defensive abilities between the two players is not large enough to say that Ian Frey is going to be slightly defensively culpable for goals. I think he's a very, very capable defender. Cello Wiegand just locks it down a little bit more, but what Ian Frey offers going forward, what he offers on the ball, the outlets that he presents us, honestly outweighs some of his defensive fallacies, if there are any. So for me, there's absolutely no doubt that he should be our starting right back. However, there's a case to be made about his fitness levels and about how we need to manage him. And that's where I think the right back position is one where we should have a true conversation about rotation, and where we might actually see a shift between Wiegand one game, Frey another game, Wiegand one game, Frey another game. Or at least that's how I would play it, because when we go to 2 games a week, I'm not sure if I want to risk Ian Frey again having that sort of load on his match playing time.
Yeah, of course, the injury concern with Frey is always going to be a conversation, at least for the rest of this season. So that goes without saying. But to me, it's give me Ian Frey, and then if you have the lead in the 65th minute, throw on Cello Wiegand to help close out the game if you're worried about anything defensively with Ian Frey. But like you said, what he can give you going forward is just so special, so valuable that you just have to do it. And then lastly, goalkeeper. We haven't seen Drake Callender in this tournament yet. So is it just an easy, that was Dos Santos giving you, we're giving you an opportunity to get some rust off, but we're going back to Drake? Or did you like the way that we could play a little bit higher up the pitch with that sweeper keeper? Or are you going right back to Drake?
I don't buy this conversation that we were able to play high up the pitch just because Dos Santos was in there. I think David Martinez had a big role to play in that as well. So there were a few variables in that consideration. And honestly, it's a very similar conversation as we've just had on right back. Drake Callender offers way too much in his shot-stopping ability and his leadership at the back than Dos Santos. And I will be nervous if I have Dos Santos in goal when we have penalties against Pachuca or against Columbus. So give me Drake Callender every day of the week. I don't care about the ball playing abilities. Goalkeeper's responsibility first and foremost is to stop goals. And I think Drake Callender is better at that.
Okay, so just to recap, for me, the only 2 changes I have from what we saw on Saturday night against Puebla are Ian Frey at right back and Drake Callender back in goal. I like what the midfield is. I like the front 3. I like the other 3 members of the back 3. I like Busquets in the back line. You have Busquets moving back to the midfield. Aviles, I don't think you ever said this, but Aviles and David Martinez is the center-back partnership. Federico Redondo coming out of the 11, and then Ian Frey and Drake Callender also going into the 11. Guys, that was a conversation on where we feel like this team is at for this tournament, what we would like to see in the most important knockout stages. As we're recording this, it's the night before this gets released. I'm keeping an eye on this Tigres-Puebla game, and Tigres scored in the 2nd minute to take a 1-0 lead, but Puebla just equalized in the 12th minute. So that game's still up for grabs. We're not exactly sure where we'll be by the time this comes out, but potentially Inter Miami could be already through if Tigres can at least get a draw in this game, but especially if they can get a win. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a wonderful day. And as always, I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.